Showers and thunderstorms. Highs tomorrow will only make it up to the upper 60s. Thursday, warmer. Sunny skies, highs in the mid-70s.
June inflation numbers show President Donald Trump's tariffs are beginning to affect the prices of imported products. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has an update on federal charges against the man who allegedly shot 2 Minnesota lawmakers. It's All Things Considered on NPR News with Juana Summers and Elsa Chang in for NPR. I'm Emily Reese in the Twin Cities. On this Tuesday, July 15th, the latest on inflation and federal charges against Vance Boelter. Opening statements in State Senator Nicole Mitchell's burglary trial also underway today. Our Matthew Holding Eagle III was in the courtroom, and he'll have more. Then to the Guadalupe River, where as search and rescue efforts along the flood-ravaged river transition to recovery, concerns grow about what may be buried out of sight. Top news next.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Senate could proceed in the coming hours on the White House's request to rescind $9.4 billion Congress had previously approved. Most of that funding was intended for international aid. The remainder, a little over $1 billion, was slated for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds NPR and PBS. Today on Capitol Hill, lawmakers voted to advance a funding bill for the Census Bureau with a controversial proposal to alter a special set of census numbers. NPR's Hansi Lo Wang reports those figures influence elections for presidents in the House of Representatives.
There's a key set of census numbers that are used to determine how many U.S. House seats and Electoral College votes each state gets for a decade. The 14th Amendment says those apportionment counts must include the, quote, whole number of persons in each state. But Republicans on the House Appropriations Committee have released a funding bill that would ban the Census Bureau from including the millions of people living in the states without legal status. Other GOP lawmakers have introduced similar bills that would exclude a broader group, all people living in the states without U.S. citizenship, including green card holders. President Trump recently said he would support such a proposal. He tried and failed to carry out a version of it for the 2020 census. If any of the current bills in Congress pass, they would likely be challenged in court. Hansi Lo Wang, NPR News, Washington.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has tried to sidestep questions about her handling of the investigative files of disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. She also refused to address reports of a rift with the FBI's deputy director over the Epstein investigation. More from NPR's Ryan Lucas.
Bondi has come under a wave of criticism from many in President Trump's MAGA base since the Justice Department released a memo last week stating that there was no Epstein client list, that Epstein had indeed died by suicide, and that no further files from the investigation would be made public. Some critics have called for Bondi's resignation. Asked how she would respond to the MAGA frustrations, Bondi said this.
We're going to fight to keep America safe again, and we're fighting together as a team.
The Attorney General also refused to address reports of a major rift with FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino over the Epstein matter.
I'm not going to discuss personnel matters. I think we all are committed to working together now to make America safe again.
Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump is touting a new trade deal with Indonesia.
We have full access to Indonesia, everything. As you know, Indonesia is very strong on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs.
Meanwhile, Trump's tariffs are finally starting to have an impact on inflation, as economists had cautioned. Consumer prices rose 2.7%.
Good morning. My name is Joe Thompson. I'm the acting United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota. I am here with a team of agents, police officers, and prosecutors who are investigating and prosecuting Vance Boelter for the political assassination of Melissa Hortman, the murder of her husband Mark Hortman, the attempted assassination of John Hoffman, and the shooting and attempted shooting of his wife, Yvette, and daughter, Hope. We are here today to announce that a federal grand jury has returned a 6-count indictment against Vance Boelter. I'll review those charges with you now. Count 1 of the indictment charges the defendant with the stalking of Melissa Hortman with the intent to murder Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman. This charge carries a sentence of up to life in prison. Count 2 charges the defendant with stalking Senator John Hoffman with the intent to murder Senator Hoffman, along with his wife, Yvette Hoffman, and their daughter, Hope Hoffman. This charge carries a sentence of up to life in prison. Count 3 charges the defendant with the murder of Melissa Hortman. This is a capital offense. It carries a penalty of life imprisonment or death. Count 4 charges the defendant with the murder of Mark Hortman. This too is a capital offense that carries a penalty of up to life in prison or death. Count 5 charges the defendant with the shooting of Melissa and Mark Hortman using a firearm during a crime of violence. This charge carries a sentence of up to life in prison. And count 6 charges the defendant with the shooting of John and Yvette Hoffman and the attempted shooting of their daughter, Hope Hoffman, using a firearm during a crime of violence. It too carries a sentence of up to life in prison. Now, this indictment includes a notice of special findings. These special findings are the first step towards seeking the death penalty against defendant Vance Boelter. The ultimate decision as to whether to seek the death penalty will not come for several months and will ultimately be decided by Attorney General Bondi with input from the Capital Case Unit in the Department of Justice, along with this office and the victims. We're here today not only to announce the charges, but also to provide an update on the investigation so far. In the investigation into these horrific crimes that Vance Boelter committed in the early morning hours of June 14th. It was a crime committed first and foremost against the Hortmans and the Hoffmans and their families. But this political assassination, the likes of which have never occurred here in the state of Minnesota, has shook our state at a foundational level. I deeply believe in transparency, so where I can share updates with the people of Minnesota about this crime and the investigation, I will. There's now an unsealed search warrant that sets forth the current status of the investigation and many updates. You can look at that affidavit, but today here I'll highlight some of the notable updates on that investigation. First, as to the attack at Senator Hoffman's home. We now know that Vance Boelter not only shot at Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, but he also shot at and attempted to kill their daughter, Hope Hoffman. Both John and Yvette acted with incredible bravery to put themselves between Boelter's bullets and their daughter. Miraculously, Hope Hoffman was not shot, but she was the 5th intended victim of Vance Boelter that night, and as such, she is included in the federal indictment. As to the murders of Melissa and Mark Hortman, we have obtained additional security footage that provides a more details of what happened leading up to and during the murders of the Hortmans. Shortly before 3:30 a.m., Vance Boelter pulled up to the Hortman home in an SUV that was disguised to look like a police vehicle with police-style lights that were flashing. Boelter got out of his car wearing a hyper-realistic silicone mask and a dark brown wig, and he approached the Hortmans' front door. He was wearing black gloves, and carrying a yellow gun on his chest. Boelter rang the doorbell, and after a moment shouted, "Police, welfare check." When Mark Hortman answered the door, Boelter shined a flashlight into Mark Hortman's eyes and said there had been reports of shots fired at the home. Mr. Hortman said he didn't know anything about a shooting. He said, "Good God, I was asleep." In the following moments, Mark Hortman told Boelter, who was still shining that flashlight towards him and in his eyes, and was standing approximately 6 feet away, "We can't see you." Mr. Hortman asked for Boelter's name and badge number. Boelter hesitated a moment and then responded Nelson 286. At this point, while Boelter was talking to Mark Hortman at the front door, Brooklyn Park police officers arrived at the scene to conduct a welfare check of the Hortmans. Those officers had learned of the shooting at Senator Hoffman's home in Champlin and went to check on Representative Hortman. Moments after they arrived at the scene, Boelter fired a volley of gunshots into the Hortman home. Brooklyn Park police officers immediately fired at Boelter as he charged forward into the Hortman home. In the moments that follow, the Hortman security footage captured audio of another volley of gunshots. At the same time, the squad car video shows several muzzle flashes through the window in the stairwell of the Hortman home. As law enforcement later discovered, Boelter shot and killed Mark Hortman at the entryway to the house. Boelter then moved past the fallen Mr. Hortman and into the home, where he shot Representative Melissa Hortman several times at close range, killing her as she attempted to flee up the stairs. Boelter then fled out the back door of the home. In those same moments, you can hear Boelter kill the Hortman's dog, their golden retriever Gilbert. FBI agents who responded to the scene found the dog, brought it to a veterinarian, an emergency vet, and tried to save it, although it later passed from its injuries. I want to provide an update as to the firearms that were recovered. We recovered both guns that were used that night. As you heard previously, that morning, when investigators responded to the Hortman home, they found a disassembled Beretta 92 9mm handgun and at least 3 magazines that were strewn about in the yard along his flight path outside the Hortman home. That gun was actually used to shoot the Hoffmans earlier that night in Champlin. A couple days later, officers found in a pond near the Hortman home another Beretta 9mm handgun. And forensic testing has shown that that was the weapon that Boelter used to shoot the Hortmans that night, and he'd actually purchased it previously. When we last spoke, we promised that the team that you see here standing before you would work tirelessly and round the clock to answer the questions. And there's 2 main questions here, the who and the why. Who, if anyone, helped Vance Boelter commit these crimes, and why did he do it? We don't know all the answers yet, but I want to tell you what we can and provide the additional details that we can to ensure the public knows as much as possible about this crime. First off, as to the who, while the investigation remains ongoing, I'm confident that Vance Boelter acted alone. There is no evidence that anyone else helped him carry out these crimes that night. That leaves us with the why. Why did Vance Boelter do this? Why did he carry out this political assassination? That's a harder question. The investigation has confirmed that this was an act of political extremism. Vance Boelter set out that night to commit a targeted political assassination. His targets were State Senator John Hoffman, State Representative Melissa Hortman, and other politicians here in Minnesota. At least on the night of June 14th, he appears to have been targeting Democratic politicians here in Minnesota. The investigation has shown that Vance Boelter had spent months investigating his targets. He had names, he had lists of names of people that he was interested in investigating, addresses, names of their family members. He appears to have conducted surveillance at least some of the houses. As I mentioned a month ago, Mr. Boelter did not leave behind a manifesto or a screed explaining his political beliefs or his philosophy. He didn't leave behind a large volume of writings on that topic. There's little evidence showing why he turned to political violence and extremism. What he left were lists of names, politicians in Minnesota, lists of politicians in other states, lists and names of attorneys at national law firms. And as has been reported, he also left behind a letter During the manhunt that weekend, Boelter drove to an area near his farmhouse in Green Isle, Minnesota. He abandoned a car there with a cowboy hat on the hood of the car. And inside of that car, he left a letter. Now, that letter is going to become public here today in the search warrant. I want to talk a little bit about it here right now. The letter is addressed to the FBI Director, Kash Patel. It's a handwritten letter. In it, Vance Boelter confesses to being the man who shot the Hoffmans and the Hortmans that night and who had been on the run all weekend. In the letter, Vance Boelter claims that he had been trained by the U.S. military off the books and that he had conducted missions on behalf of the U.S. military in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. In his letter, Vance Boelter claims that Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota wanted him and approached him about killing United States Senator Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. Boelter claims in the letter that he wanted nothing to do with Governor Walz's plan and that he would go public if he insisted. Boelter claims that people threatened to hurt his family if he didn't participate in this plan to murder Senators Klobuchar and Smith. Boelter says in his letter that he met with people to talk about the request. And then when he arrived at the meeting, some people were waiting to kill him. Boelter wrote that he was able to get away and that he went back a short time later and shot those people. The letter, as I said, is contained in an unsealed search warrant and will be made public. As I mentioned a month ago, my office is committed to being as transparent as possible in this case in light of the legitimate public interest in the case and to ensure the information in the public record is as accurate as possible. I want to leave you all with this. Vance Boelter committed a terrible act of political violence and extremism, a targeted political assassination that was unprecedented in the state of Minnesota. It's been a terrible personal tragedy for the Hoffman and Hortman families, and it's something that has rocked the entire state of Minnesota and even the country. This indictment represents the next step in our efforts to hold the man responsible for this crime, Vance Boelter, responsible for his actions. Thank you. Yes, Luke.
Mr. Thompson, it may be obvious, but he wasn't trained by the U.S. military. This is all a fantasies. Can you say that?
Yes, I agree.
Do
Matt.
you think this is, he's legitimately delusional here, or is this some sort of ruse? What does the evidence show you in that regard?
Was it a delusion that he believes, or was it a delusion that is designed as an effort to misdirect our investigation or to frankly excuse his crimes? Well, that's a good question. It certainly seems designed to excuse his crimes. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
His court appearance?
It's not yet scheduled. It should be probably later this week if I had to guess.
One more thing. Was there any evidence that he tried to go after Senators Klobuchar and Smith? I know that kind of the centerpiece of this letter.
No, not that we know of today. Obviously, the investigation remains ongoing and will continue, as all do.
Are you looking into any mental health aspects of this as part of the investigation, or is that something that the defense would be doing?
Like in any case, the defense could well raise his competency. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out.
Do you anticipate your office recommending death penalty? I know it's up to the Attorney General, but...
It's too soon to tell. That's a holistic review that we are focused on the investigation and the indictment, and we'll turn to that here in the coming weeks. And that's something that will be in consultation with the victims and their families, this office, as well as the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C.
In regards to the letter and what he's claiming that he met with people that wanted him to threaten his family about going ahead to complying with this plan, and that he got away and later came back and shot those people, is he saying that those people were the Hortmans and Hoffmans, or that they were involved in that meeting?
He leaves blanks for the names, and so he doesn't name the people that he claims were involved. The idea that the Hortmans or Hoffmans were involved is offensive.
Is there any indication that these families, that these representatives did have contact with him throughout the course of his life? I mean, we know that he had some kind of, political appointments, whatever you want to call those. Did they know each other? Was he aware of them? Were they aware of him?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, he was on one of these state boards. There's dozens of these boards in the state of Minnesota, like in most states. There may be even more here than many states. I don't think it's indicative necessarily of significant political involvement, and it doesn't seem like, you Google Vance Boelter, you read about his political assassination, not his political involvement prior to June 14th. Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time. Thank you.